So I'm going to post this, and I'm going to post it as I intended, but I'm going to tell you now so that you can beat feet if you don't want to see it. This build didn't go the way I wanted it to, and the quad didn't end up the way I wanted it to, and after 25 hours of problems and tech support and manufacturing problems, I'm going to give it a no. If you want to find out why, if you want to find out what I really think about it, stick around. I go through most of the build, and then when it goes sideways, I cut off, and then I'm going to show you how it ended. So there's a piece missing in the middle if you're trying to learn to build this, but he's got a build video. You can watch that. This is what you should watch if you want to find out from someone who actually watched his videos and then built the quad what they think. So here we go. I said here we go. Come on. So this doesn't look terribly difficult. Even without his videos or pulling them back up, you know, you can see that there's a pivot point where it's going to press into another screw, so it's going to make these arms really easy to take off of here. So we should be able to put these together like so, and these should line up with those holes, and then this one should go together like so. So, and it lines up with those holes. So that is going to be the base of the quadcopter. Next step should easily, or should, as far as I can tell, press nuts up means the outer ring. And the reason that is because when we pull, we won't want to pull them through. So these should go straight into here. Again, I'm trying to find ways where you can see me working. So it should go through all 4 of these holes, no problem. He kind of skips through this because it can be a monotonous pain to try to get it to work on camera. Once you've got all 4 of these in, then you're going to put the standoffs on just to hold it in place. That way when we pick it up, you can take a look and make sure that you don't have any gaps and everything's aligned right without accidentally having it fall back apart and going through this pain again. So again, I'm just finger tightening these. And then once you're done, so I finger tighten them, and once I'm done, there is my fitment. You can see that it fits pretty nice and tight. The arms will get more secure when these last couple of screws are in. So now that I've got these in, I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down nice and snug. I'm not going to over tighten them though. I don't really see a reason to over tighten these at this point. At this point, the build says build out from, or in from the motors, which isn't a bad idea, especially if we're going to use his Vista installation later. So I'm going to pull this motor out and take a look. And these are not cap head, but I believe that he provided cap heads in the kit down here. We are going to start with this motor. So 3 of the motors are already on. So this is how we do it. This is the easiest way that I found. So put in the top corner hole, make sure that the cords are where you want them to, the leads, the power leads to the ESC. Put that one in and do the one next to it. And you can rotate it a little bit as you do it until you find the hole. Opposite corner. Once that's in, the other 2 holes are really easy to find. And once I've got these 4 in and tighten down with my fingers. I'm going to use my driver. I'm going to use the cross pattern to tighten them a little bit at a time to make sure that it seats square, because if you tighten one side then the other, it can pull it so that it's not seated flat. It can pull it to an angle. So typically this is how you just keep going across, tightening slightly until you get it where you want it. So at this time, I've come back the next day to solder. I had an issue with the soldering iron where the tip was loose and it wasn't soldering. I was losing heat. So I went and I bought a new soldering tip, came back, soldered them on. I ended up using these quick connects. These are 3-wire quick connects. The reason being is it makes it easier for me to check the speed control to make sure that nothing's grounded and shorted. So if you have it wired straight to the motor, you're going to show a ground out every single time, and you're going to show that it's going to short. But if you have it into these, you can pull the motor off, check the speed control, and make sure you don't have anything that's going to short. At this point, I'm going to go over what's happened off screen. So I've soldered all of the motors into these quick connects, these 3-pin quick connects, because in my experience so far, when you ding a motor, I don't like to solder back to the speed control. Heat's the enemy. So I've been putting these in, or these luminaire connectors in the middle, one of the two, for most of the things that I build whenever I have to solder to electronic components. Haven't done a lot of quads, but just components in general. So whenever possible, I use something like that. So I have soldered the positive negative on, I have soldered in the capacitor, I have soldered on all the motor wires, and I've shown you just the end soldering of one of these connectors. The next step is going to be the video controller, which is a different set of videos, and it's kind of confusing. So I kind of wish he would have remade them. He would have gotten more views, but instead there's like a supplemental. So let's head that direction. So this is the main reason that I wouldn't suggest most people build or quadcopter. I would suggest that you buy it unless this is what you enjoy, because I find this to be very stressful. So tinning this can be a real pain in the ass. That one looks like it's got too much on it. Or just enough on it. Fuck, I don't know. My eyes used to be amazing. Now they are not. Alright, it looks like I have everything the way I want it. You can't really see, but it looks like it's tinned. So now, let's see if we can move in some better light. Get in from the side here. That's not bad. Alright. So, the next step here is going to be to tin these wires a little bit. Okay, so according to his video, it's red, black, white, yellow, black, yellow. Now, he has a little message that comes onto the screen that says he wired it wrong. So I don't know if that's here on the board, but I'll swap it at the board if that's the case. So at this point, it's time to cut the harness off, because now all the wires are secured at this side, and start to solder this to the speed control. Yay. Opened up another bag that came with the quad, and this looks like the mounting hardware for the Vista. I think one thing to note here is that we really should be using more space. I think I started in just too tight of a space here to try to film this, because there are a lot of parts, keeping everything straight is going to be the biggest problem for most people here. So like all things we do in life, I have to do it different. I'm not finding the same simplicity in piecing these things together that he found, and I don't know if it's a size thing, but I'm just going to start here and go from the back, find the hole like this, because I was unable with the capacitor to slide these in the way he did. So I'm going to go this way, find all the holes, twist it as I set it down so the screws don't fall out. So because no one really wants to watch tedious soldering. So I'm soldering the RX and TX, and in the video he does these backwards. So I've swapped them. So instead of yellow being on the outside, yellow's on the inside. And in order to, like, my eyes are not great. They used to be great, but I'm 40, so it is what it is. So a pro tip is, if you can't really read what you're doing, then use your cell phone, take a picture and zoom in. That's the best way to try to figure out what you're looking at. So I've soldered the RX and TX. I've soldered the S-bus, black and yellow, and on the other side, I've soldered the power. So at this point, everything should be soldered up for the Vista. All right, with the antenna and everything in place, the wires all soldered on, we are looking more and more like a quadcopter all the time. It's definitely lighter than the Nazguls, definitely. The parts are definitely thinner, it's lighter, but I don't know if the Nazguls are overkill. I mean, I've hit trees and pipes and everything else from the Nazguls, and I haven't broken anything, but I won't know until I hit the same thing with this and break or don't. Instructions being weird and using a different camera, the best I could do was a hybrid setup. So I use the horns on the inside. If I flip it around, it hits the camera. So the best I could get it was like this. So you use the housing, use the longer screws, and use the housing, longer screws on the inside. This is the best fit I could get. So I'm going to test the main things, which are that the power's not shorted. This way it should beep and then stop because the capacitor's got to load. I should get ground, and the top of the USB should be grounded. These other plugs, that's a ground, so that's right. That's a ground here, that's a power, that's right. So as far as I can tell, as long as I haven't bridged something that I couldn't see, everything looks like it's in the right spot and hooked up correctly. So we're going to move on to the last phase of blowing this fucker up. So yeah, that build ended kind of quick, huh? So yeah, here's why. I soldered everything in, finished everything up, made a bunch of more videos, had nothing but problems with Betaflight, had problems with BL Heli. I'm a beginner, I expect to have some problems. I'm not going to say, oh, this is a terrible quad because I had issues. I've had issues with every quad. However, when I buy an iFlight, I don't have that problem, at least not with the Nazguls. They were out of the box. Good tune, good hardware, good software. Everything's set up for me, and I haven't had problems connecting to it. So here's what happens. I take the quad out to fly it after getting it all set up and running. I set it down, the motors spin up for a few seconds. I mess around with my headset and the motor starts to twitch, the back left. So I go look at it and everything looks good. It's all soldered, everything's on. What do? I take it home, I resolder everything again, I look it over and the ESC's out. There's just nothing. The back ESC is just shot, the back left. So I try to get a hold of Get FPV, which I don't recommend for customer service. If you need products and you live in South Florida or somewhere close and they have what you want, order from them. But don't expect customer service. It's terrible. So I ordered an iFlight. I ordered an F7 iFlight flight stack, flight controller, and speed control. And I soldered it all up, got it going on the bench, took it out, back left didn't work again. Frustrating. So I brought it home. And I thought, well, what's wrong? So I spun all the motors, and the back left one had more resistance than all the other ones. It was just strange. So tried to get a replacement. Couldn't get any kind of customer service through GetFPV. So I ordered 2 new rear motors from GetFPV. Just paid for them because I wanted to get this done. When they came in, I replaced the motor, and I put yet another flight controller and speed control in. So now I'm on the 3rd because the flight stack was still sold out. So I got it wired up, I got it running, and this time flew like a champ. With the iFlight in, the new motor, it was a nice quad. I flew it around a little bit, not very much, maybe 10 minutes, just around in circles, tested it out, put it away. But I was determined that I wanted to do the review on this quad as it was intended. So I finally got a new speed control and flight controller. And I soldered it all in, and it was a pain because the wires were the wrong length coming off the motors now because I had soldered them into the iFlight, and then I had actually soldered it in a pad in between, so I ended up having to solder the wires together with a breech wire. So multiple solders in every wire, but I got it going and it worked. Took it out. So the first flight, I mean, it felt great. So here it is. Oops. Well, it started out fun. Yeah, that's how it ended. It wasn't going fast. It wasn't very high. That pole, I mean, it's an FPV camera, so there's some distortion. But the pole's about 10 or 15 feet in the air, and I came down from 10 or 15 feet above that. It wasn't going real fast. I've taken way harder crashes with both my Baby Hawk HD and all of my iFlight quads. So here's the gist of what happened. I hit the pole, it landed on the ground. I picked it up, it looked fine. Put the battery back in straight, put the camera back on, and started it up. When I started, I heard tick, tick, tick. So I instantly turned it off. And what had happened was that this rear arm, because of the way it slotted in, had shifted. Now, I didn't hit real hard, and it shifted, and that kind of annoyed me. And I thought, man, this is a bad idea to have this with just, one screw. And I thought, no problem, it shifted. It's what's going to happen. I mean, I crashed. You can't expect it not to crash. And so I grabbed it, and I tried to pinch these two arms. So I went here, and I tried to pinch to see if I get this to slide. And that snapped right off of my hand. Now, it wasn't broken. It wasn't wobbly. It snapped. Now, can you typically break something like that? No, not typically. So I came home and I measured because I wanted to see. And this is 4 to 4.1. And this arm here is 3.9, 3.8. So you've got 2 to 3 millimeter difference in these two arms. You can see there's a little bit of bubbling in here. So it's just poorly manufactured. It's just bad manufacturing. That's what it comes down to. A couple things to finish up. I wouldn't recommend this quad. I wouldn't recommend any of this for a beginner. From the problems with the electronics to the bad manufacturing, I wouldn't recommend this quad. This is not going to be conducive for someone who wants to fly. Even, I mean, I don't even know. Is it budget? Because it was $400 and some plus now I've spent $250 more. So you can get an iFlight for under $3 with, I think, better components. The build video, the thing is Bardwell has taught me a ton of shit. I mean, I am not Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to break shit if you go out with me. But I don't agree with this. I don't think this is good, and I don't think that he should push this. I think that he should tell people that this is outdated, and it's poorly manufactured, and it's not a good quad for a beginner. You shouldn't label it for a beginner because it's not robust. It's not easy. You're going to spend a ton of time. And there are things that he even says and does in the video that aren't right. Like, your flight controller is secured to the stack. And when you calibrate it, that flight controller is in the stack. And during his build, he says, it's not going to, I'm not put these screws on. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. If that thing wiggles just a little, just two threads, your flight controller is now not balanced. It thinks that your quad is imbalanced and it won't fly right. You need those screws on there. They don't secure it so that you can't knock it out in a crash. They keep it in place so when you calibrate it, it's calibrated. These are the types of things that I would have expected from him because he seems like a genuine guy. To go back in and say, hey guys, I have a new quad. Pull those videos. You don't need those videos. You have Patreon, you have everything. You don't need those. Tell people that this is not the quad for them. I was excited to try to upgrade, and I feel like I downgraded. So I'm going to give this a no. Don't buy. That's my review. Don't buy this quad. His new one might be great. I actually ordered that frame to put this in. I want to see if that frame's better. I don't know. The motors are great. It's a good choice on motors. Good, inexpensive, nice flying motors. Good props. Inexpensive, nice flying props. The frame itself went together fine. The engineering to make these slide in quick fix arms, that's terrible. If they can shift, it's terrible. You don't want that. You don't want an arm that shifts. It needs to have 2 screws. It can't have 1 screw. I don't know whose idea that was. Not a good idea. I'm going to give it a no. I mean, I spent time and I made, protective side skirts to keep the junk out, on my 3D printer, similar to the ones from my Nazgul, right? Because I wanted to fly this quad. I wanted to like it. And I was enjoying it. I was having a good time. It doesn't fly terrible. But the headaches, the 25 hours and $700, it's not worth it. Don't buy this quad. Maybe try his other one. Maybe watch more of his videos. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I caught an old video and somewhere it tells me it's not for me. But I can tell you this is not for me. I won't buy another. Not this, and I won't suggest it. I even created this 3D printed stack topper that you can see there to stop things from moving a little bit because I could still feel it not quite in there right. It was just not right without those screws on, and I wanted to make sure that it couldn't come off the top. So I had to go back in and put the screws on after he said, it's not a big deal. Well, it was a big deal. So anyways, that's the review. That's part of the build. I hope this is helpful. My suggestion would be skip this and start with just an iFlight, a 4S, V2. fly the crap out of it. You can do anything with it. And once you've done that, it's cheap. It flies great. It comes, if you get one with an F7 in it, it's going to be way better than this. That's my beginner's review. So maybe you guys think different. I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear your experiences because mine was terrible. This has been my least favorite part of FPV so far. So anyways, I have other stuff to do, other things to make, other things to build. I've still got to make my build video for these, how I create these, and there's going to be a 3D tutorial and a printing tutorial, and I don't think I'll sell them because I don't know if enough of you have the Nazguls, but man, these things have made me enjoy these quads way more. So anyways, deuces. Look out for the video on the iFlights. Be cool, be kind, be true to yourself. See ya.